I am Kratos, the god of war, and you should subscribe to Comics Explained. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I just woke up, so my voice is super deep, but we are back with Justice League, Godzilla, Kong, and the ending of this is crazy. It totally blew my mind. I can't wait to see what comes next. So, picking up where we left off in the last video, we got Godzilla, and we got the Kraken, and we got some monster whose name I don't know that I'm sure you typed in the comments, but I'm gonna call him Tim. So, what we get is like this three-way battle between these guys, and Aquaman and Mera and Wonder Woman and all these folks are just kind of watching it all go down. Because what are they gonna do? Right? I mean, well, one, the whole idea was to unleash the Kraken so it could fight Godzilla, so they could keep Godzilla from destroying Atlantis, because as you guys know, from the last videos that we've done, there are beacons at different places around the world that have been planted there for the purpose of summoning Godzilla. Now, what we're gonna find out at the end of all this is that this is actually just a distraction. Right? Like Godzilla facing off against the Justice League in these different locations is all a distraction by Lex Luthor, who we already knew was a part of the story, and it's really, really dope. But basically, the fight between these guys goes exactly the way that you would think, right? It's just bare knuckle brawling, right? Just like punching each other, hitting each other and everything. And it's pretty dope. Now, of course, Green Lantern shows up and he just wraps up Tim in a Green Lantern hard-like construct net, which is kind of cool, I guess, right? It just sort of keeps him away from the main fight per se. And then the Kraken gets the upper hand on Godzilla. Right? Like literally the Kraken gets the upper hand on this guy, right? And the thing is, like, while they're trying to get the beacon out of there as fast as possible, there is collateral damage, right? Like the dome's cracking and all that kind of stuff. So Green Lantern is basically forced to like allow Tim to escape, to go after the Flash, right? Who's just swimming as fast as he can, because when you can't run on a hard surface, you can't run at the speed of light. So, right, he's just swimming really fast. The guy's trying to get out of there as fast as he can. Green Lantern's got to like put a hard-like construct bubble around the dome in order to keep everybody in there safe and keep them alive and from being destroyed by everything. And they're just kind of like watching on. But finally, the Kraken gets its claws on Godzilla. And at that point, Wonder Woman and Aquaman are like, cool, so the Kraken's got Godzilla. We'll go do our thing. Wrong, because we don't even get to see it. We don't get the we don't even get any of that. We just see the atomic breath just fire off, and presumably the Kraken is just totally obliterated. And they're like, no, like, what are we gonna do, right? So like, Green Lantern to the rescue, hard-like construct over the dome, and now they're just kind of stuck there trying to figure out what comes next. Now at that point, we switch over with Oliver Queen. Yes, I know, the head of the thing that Oliver Queen saw was one of those crawler thingies from Skull Island. I get that. Let me want to believe that it's King Ghidorah. Let me have my fantasy, guys. You don't have to deuce all over my fantasy, my hopes and dreams, because it'd be awesome if it was King Ghidorah. But this is where the League of Assassins comes into play. No, not the League of Shadows. League of Shadows was made for the Dark Knight Rises movie, and then eventually it was adapted to the comic books. It's always been the League of Assassins in DC Comics. But Oliver Queen shows up here, and ever the guy who is kind of goofy and silly, but also has it where it counts, then he's just kind of like musing to himself, only to like crawl out from under where he's hiding and be encountered by like a boatload of the League of Assassins. And he makes this like hilarious comment. He's like, was I saying all that stuff out loud? And they're like, no. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter anyway. So like, he goes to attack these guys as best he can, but for the most part, there's only so much he can do. Oliver Queen's cool, but he's not like this nigh indestructible guy. So he ends up just firing off this arrow that creates an explosion. It basically offers a distraction, and the guy makes his escape, right? Just like jumps out into the water, and he's like, okay, so like, the League of Assassins is involved in this. We're gonna need more help. As if the Justice League wasn't stretched thin enough as it is. Now, here's the thing. Here's where stuff gets really cool here. So what you do is you pick up with iPhone, right? And as he's like flying and heading towards Batman, by the way, for those of you guys who are new to this video, we're calling Cyborg iPhone, right? I mean, because it makes the most logical sense, right? The guy's a walking, talking iPhone, you know? But anyway, so him and Batman are talking to each other, and basically you end up finding out that like when they had raided the files of Lex Luthor and all his forces, they had basically raided the files that included Monarch. Now, this is one of the things that like Lex Luthor and his guys are already well aware of, and the Justice League is just now learning this. Now, as we know, as the viewing audience, right, as the people who are reading this comic, Monarch is the organization that has been studying the Titans, like in that universe where Godzilla and Kong and all these monsters come from, right? Remember, at the very beginning of this video, they were yanked from that universe and brought into this universe. And so with all this information about Monarch really available to the Justice League, iPhone makes this comment where he says, I sent out a summary of the Monarch files highlighting all of the Titans' known strengths and weaknesses. Now, Batman, of course, says, I'm reviewing it now. What's happening in Atlantis? The response of iPhone, waiting for an update and nothing yet from Shazam, who's MIA, or Green Arrow on Skull Island. Supergirl is headed back there to check on the ape called Kong. Based on what's in those files, Kong is as close to a good guy as you'll find among the Titans. So like, they're building up to bringing Kong in. Finally, we're 4 issues in, and Kong has just been sitting on an island over there somewhere. Like, it's just like, okay, come on guys, do something. It's better not be one of those stories where like Kong comes in at the last minute, right? It's gonna piss me off. And so Batman's like, okay, so like if we can make a 300-foot tall ally, like that's awesome. And he's like, by the way, have you checked on the specs that I sent you? And the response of iPhone is, yes, that's a very ambitious plan. And Batman's like, but with the help of the Flash and his friends, we're going to be able to make this work, because what they're doing is they're building the cosmic treadmill. Now, this is cool, right? Because the cosmic treadmill, you don't really see very often. But for those of you guys who don't know about it, the cosmic treadmill, it basically allows a user to go backward or forward in time, depending on what kind of radiation they use, right? Positive radiation sends you into the future, negative radiation sends you into the past, right? But the fact is, they're working on bringing the cosmic treadmill back, but they're using Wally to seemingly power the treadmill, or at the very least, a kind of interim use for the treadmill. Most likely it will go to Barry, right? The cosmic treadmill and Barry Allen are just like inexorably intertwined because it really all started with him. And that's when you pick up with Supergirl, who's headed back over to Skull Island in order to recruit King Kong. But when she gets there, we end up finding out that like Gorilla Grodd and Gorilla City have shown up there to like bow down to the power of Kong. And on one hand, it seems kind of silly, but on the other hand, it makes perfect sense, because if you were a member of Gorilla City and a 300-foot tall gorilla just appeared in your reality, you would probably worship it as your god as well. Although technically, Gorilla Grodd did this when he first encountered Kong back when they had initially gone over to that universe. So he's already like assuming that this is like a god of some kind, and most likely just told everybody else in Gorilla City, hey guys, there's like a 300-foot tall gorilla over there and he's our god, let's go, right? And then like they head over there, and like that's where they are now. Now the cool thing here is you would expect Supergirl to be able to like just overpower these guys in an instant, right? Because when it comes to like Gorilla Grodd's telepathy, his ability to mind control people, Supergirl can overcome that, right? Initially, the idea seemed to be that he was trying to use it on Kong, but what Gorilla Grodd does is he reveals that he's got a green kryptonite horn, and what this does is it exposes Supergirl to green kryptonite radiation, and then because of that, it allows his telepathy to overtake Supergirl. And so King Kong, who's just been down bad for Supergirl this entire time, right? Smitten with this chick, right? You know how they always say the worst thing she could do is say no? Nope. The worst thing she could do is just beat you into submission, because that's exactly what Supergirl does. She just starts pummeling this guy, right? So hey, you know, when it comes to asking girls out, you pay your money and take your chances. I don't know what to tell you, right? Dating in 2024, it's a struggle for everybody. So what you do here is you switch back over to Shazam. And Shazam has, for the most part, just been punishing himself. Now, the reason for this, as we covered in the previous videos, is that Shazam was there when Superman was hit, because Superman is, by all standards of measurement, dead, right? Like if he's not dead, he's certainly dying, right? That's basically what's going on here. And so because of that, he kind of sees himself as the fault of it all, which is basically true. I mean, it is kind of Billy Batson's fault. Technically, it's Godzilla's fault, but Billy Batson didn't do anything to make things better. And so because of that, Batman kind of tells him, like, stop punishing yourself, all that kind of stuff, take your anger and channel it into something constructive, which is actually a great thing for him to do, right? I mean, the worst thing you could do in a state of like high emotional duress is become self-destructive. That's how you end up completely and totally destroying your life, or potentially something worse, right? But the fact is, Billy Batson doesn't want to hear it, because what he's doing is heading directly to the headquarters of Lex and all his guys. And while he is able to hold his own for a little bit, at the end of the day, despite how powerful he is, he can't hold all these guys off, because it's basically every villain in the DC universe of any measurable power who's here, right? And so Billy Batson fighting these guys as best he can, and he's putting in the work. I mean, he's putting in the work. Understand, son. Understand, son. What's happening here? Billy Batson is putting in the work against these guys, right? Because you got Captain Cold who shows up. Billy Batson's like, man, son, you better come strong, right? And then you have like Mongol who appears. He's like, bruh, like this is not gonna do it. But then Giganta comes out of nowhere and says, no, but I can do it, and just bam, one punches this guy, which I guess when you're like a 50-foot tall woman with super strength makes it very easy to do. But the fact remains here, right? Switching back over to Hal Jordan in Atlantis, using his heart-like constructs to try to keep this dome from collapsing in on itself, that he is struggling to make this happen, because it's not even really just like a matter of willpower. As most of you guys who are aware of the Green Lantern mythos know, Green Lanterns derive their power from willpower, and Hal Jordan's willpower is basically limitless, right? It was of such a high level, the guy forged his own ring out of just sheer will. I mean, it's just kind of nuts, right? It'd be like you just being like, I really, really want this. And then it comes into existence. It's nuts, right? It's crazy that he was able to pull that off. But the fact is, the weight of 10,000 pounds of pressure of the ocean pushing around on him, that will take its toll on you. Because unlike Aquaman or Mera or any of the other Atlantean soldiers that are out there, they're acclimated to this environment. Hal Jordan is not. And so the pressure ultimately begins to get to him. The hard-like construct starts to collapse. The dome is out there, but at the last minute, Jon Stewart, Jessica Cruz, Guy Gardner, and Simon Baz show up, right? They literally come out and bail this guy out, right? They put the hard-like constructs in there, which I know you guys are excited to see Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner. Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz, I mean, yeah, I guess, I mean, they're okay. But like, it is cool to see these dudes show up, right? So they bail out Hal Jordan. You have Godzilla, who's just like sitting there after having destroyed the Kraken, and then Aquaman ends up putting this nth metal chain around Godzilla's foot. Now, what that means, for those of you guys who don't know, nth metal is about as close as you get to something comparable to like Uru metal or adamantium from Marvel Comics, maybe a hybrid of both, but it's an incredibly durable metal. I guess technically, what is it, Promethium metal, I think it is, in DC Comics is similar to adamantium. No, it doesn't matter. It's just one of DC's most durable metals and probably the strongest metal in existence. And so the fact that it will hold Godzilla in place, this allows us to switch over to Lex Luthor. And this is where son, this is where it's gonna blow your socks off. Because Lex Luthor asked this question, is the connection stable, right? This voice comes in online for 90 minutes and counting, the system is stable. Lex Luthor, then let's do it, execute link up. And he says, I'm live. And this person's like, how does it feel, Mr. Luthor? And he's like, powerful. And so this person's like, don't mean to interrupt your moment, Lex, but I count 4 Titans heading back your way. Mechagodzilla must have a beacon built into its system. We should locate and deactivate. The response of Lex, no, let them come. They need to learn who the true alpha is. Now, Mechagodzilla is awesome. Mechagodzilla is awesome. But here's the thing. At that point, what you do is you switch over to Ra's al Ghul and the Lazarus Pits, because the League of Assassins is flying in that skull. And the idea is to drop it into this volcano, right? This Lazarus volcano, because presumably what it will do is restore this thing back to life. And so now what you're going to have is not just all these Titans running around, you're going to potentially have a world-killing monster running around as well that literally burrows into the earth and kills a planet. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Man, this story is so dope. God, it's absolutely amazing. If you guys need to get caught up, make sure you click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.